All right. All right, all right, all right. Here I am. I think it's about to be up on YouTube. There we go. There it is. Sweet. Welcome back. Let's see. I'll do my little preamble. We'll let some people trickle in. Today gonna have Josh Strawn, who I love, old friend. Yeah, an old friend at this point. I think I've known Josh maybe for like about 10 years or so, almost. Friend from New York. He lives in New Orleans now. It's crazy. It's like New York friends, but I'm in LA. He's in New Orleans. Yeah, Josh is a musician first and foremost. That's how I know him. He plays in the band Vaura. Vaura is a band with Toby Driver from KO Dot and Kevin Huffnagel from Gorguts. They're fantastic band. And let's see what else. I mean, Azar Swan maybe is his main, most known thing. And he also was in a band called Blacklist for many years that a lot of people heard. Yeah, he's a very serious musician, singer, and producer, and also a writer. Um, I would call him a thinker. He's not. I don't know. I don't know if he'd call himself a thinker because it just has this pretentious air about it. He's definitely a writer, though, for sure, and very keyed into like political and theoretical stuff. He actually knows about real politics. Like he actually knows what he's talking about. It's not just flights of fancy. So he'll be able to. I'll be able to learn some stuff. We'll all be able to learn a little bit here. Um, so, yeah, let's bring Josh on. So I'm trying to think if there's any like sort of personal updates or anything before I just sort of, plugs or whatever. Nah, man, I'm just here in quarantine, man. I'm chipping away at some Nothing Human tracks. Like a new Nothing Human single came out a couple days ago. If you want to check it out, called Not for Long. And another Nothing Human single coming next week. I'm like writing new Psalm Zero stuff very slowly, but dude, the second this quarantine shit is over, we're back out in the world. I'm gonna rebook the Psalm Zero tour that fell through. Um, get out there, play this Sparta material out a little bit. Um, yeah, and also I'm finally going to the post office either tomorrow or on Monday, so mail orders are gonna go out. You will get your shit, I promise. I just got over the paranoia and got like a mask and stuff. Um, yeah. All right, here we go. Let's bring in my man Josh Strawn. What's up, dude?
What's up?
You are. I should have said this beforehand. You are kind of shrouded in darkness, which is not inappropriate. But I mean, you're like
You know,
you're in
gotta keep it
the.
on brand, man.
It's on brand. It's on brand. I mean, if you're down with it, you can see how you look, right? You're down with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's all good, dude. Yeah. What's going on, dude? What's new with you? What's on your mind?
Oh man, I haven't left my house in almost a month. And when I say that, I know a lot of people have been going out like here and there a couple times, taking walks, but I haven't been going out very much. So,
Yeah,
um,
like really behaving yourself.
yeah. I mean, my daughter was last here on March 12th. She started getting a little cough.
Oh
A
boy.
few days later, she was at her mom's and sounded like the stuff. So they've been, recovering, and she's just coming back day after tomorrow. So I've just been here, spent the first week getting over all the panic and being
But
online too much, and then I finally started like making music and kind of chilling out.
it's okay though. She does not have corona.
I still think it's very likely she did. I
Yeah.
mean, she's 7, so like that's not really a huge threat for them.
Right. Right. That's what I've been hearing. And just in general, they don't even show symptoms as much as adults. Is
Yeah,
that
she had like a fever and cough for like 2 nights, which only really bothered her at night.
okay? Yeah.
And then her mom got the kind of like loss of taste and smell thing, which was kind of a huge
Yeah.
flag. So
Oof. Good. Well, dude. Yeah.
they're fine now, though. So I mean,
Glad
either it
that's coming
wasn't the
around.
stuff or they got over and it was mild. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple people that have had it, but no one that's been severely fucked up by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So yeah, you're back to making music. What are you working on? What's the
Well, I
current
kind of
deal?
started right before all this with the most incredible kind of random, unexpected experience. I started out messing with some ambient stuff, and I found myself on an email with Peter Newton from Clan of Zymox.
Okay.
Well, I'd actually, I'm getting some echo from you now.
Yeah, you know what it is? I'm gonna do the headphones. Let's
Okay.
just not even go down that road. Yeah, Echo's on brand too, but like I don't want janky horse shit to be my brand. And I mean it is YouTube, but it's like, um yeah. I was watching Rogan today. I was just like, I mean, if Rogan's got a fucking headphones on, but he doesn't have cool hair to deal with. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's like, I've got something to lose here with the headphones. Here we go. We got Caroline in effect.
I've never seen the Joe Rogan show or listened to it.
You've never listened to Rogan, dude?
No.
What do you think? You're better than me?
I mean, I don't listen to many podcasts in general,
I know.
but
He's not exactly like elevating the discourse to like razor sharp levels, but
yeah.
I don't know, dude. His thing with Bernie was great. I was watching him with Cornell West today.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Okay.
Cornell West was making it good. Not in
Yeah.
any case.
I'm kind of,
But
I'm kind of I don't know. I'm not a curmudgeon when it comes to stuff like this. I just don't really engage very much. I mean, I've never listened to Chapo either. Like, it doesn't. It's like I have a few things. I like that Hermetics podcast, and
oh yeah, you fuck with Hermetics, dude. It's so good.
I listen to Douglas Rushkoff's podcast and stuff like that. But it's very rare. Like very, you know, here and
I
there.
I actually haven't checked out Douglas Rushkoff's podcast, and I haven't really kept up with him except he was the first. So Marcus, he was the first media theory, any kind of theory I ever read in high school. The book Media Virus. I don't know.
Right, right.
That was like totally revelatory to me. What's his podcast called?
Team Human. I mean,
Nice.
we talk about bad branding. It's a little bit rough, but
Well, it's just like a Team Human. Well, that's actually kind of the team I've been trying to stake out,
well, yeah.
but
I mean, it's kind of I think it's kind of one of the most interesting things about him is that there's a huge aesthetic dimension to a lot of the things that we talk about, and a lot of things that we kind of fuck with. And Rushkoff, he doesn't speak like a theoretical writer. You know what I mean? He kind of has this journalistic tone of voice or this kind of like enthusiastic activist kind of voice.
yeah.
He's not like he's kind of in a way, even though the dude's like friends with Genesis and was in PTV and all this kind of like cool shit. He has great ideas. He's not really what like the average person 10 years or 15 years younger than me would think is like hip. You know what I mean?
At all, yeah. He's like
You know?
human, all too human, a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's like almost like, well, if you just couch this in different language and kind of like, had a different opening theme song and podcast name, people would be down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was in. I didn't even know he was in Psychic TV. That's very cool. I didn't.
Very
Yeah.
brief, like I think briefly in some of the later lineups, but like one of the best podcasts he has is with Genesis. They do a really awesome uh, conversation, just kind of about counterculture and what it
Yeah.
like and how it's changed.
Dude, I gotta. All right, I'm gonna check his out. Yeah, we never talked about Hermetics too. That's such an interesting one. Meta Nomad is one of the he's one of the sharper ones in
Yeah,
that scene
right, right.
in the cave Twitter. If that's, I don't think it's called that anymore. But yeah. Shout out to that. So you're working on ambient music now? You got some ambient, like a
Oh
new
yeah, so
project,
I
or
was trying to do it. I got into Old Tower, right? And I was like, some of that new stuff, I was like, man, this is like as good as like stuff off of old 4AD. You know what I mean? It's no longer this sort of like corny sort of D&D thing. And I got my daughter into it. She likes to go. She's always been going to sleep to like good ambient music, like John Fox, Rainforest Spiritual Enslavement, Tor Lundvall, stuff like that. So she gets into these like dungeon synth bands that
uh
I'm just kind of randomly playing her, and some of them are terrible. And I'm like, sweetheart, I'll make you a record like this to go to sleep to. So
oh
I
man,
just started like fucking with this and I was like, it's cool, but I need somebody who knows what they're doing to help me, like somebody who's like who does this much better than I do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I had such a cool experience with like the last Azar Swan being so collaborative.
Mm.
Like Doug from Puron and Mark, from Bloody Minded, Anatomy of Habit, and
Oh,
uh,
right, he's on that. That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so, I mean, it was a really great experience. So I had reached out to Warren Lefevre from His Name Is Alive, who I've known for just from kind of from a distance. Like he mixed one of the first Religious to Damn singles, and I've hung out with him a couple times over the years as his bands come through town or my band's gone to Detroit, and always kind of like floated the idea of working together. So I finally hit him up. I was like, dude, why don't we finally do a thing, And so he was down, and then I found myself on an email with Peter Newton from Clan of Zymox, and I was just like, I hit Warren up. I was like, dude, I want to ask Peter Newton to do something like this because like Sleeps with the Fishes, his collaboration with Michael Brook is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know. I know Clan of Zymox. I know I've heard them, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Post punk that I never knew about, like,
Yeah,
back
I
in the
mean it's
days.
really
Yeah.
important. Like the first couple records on 4AD, they're like really, really brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
But the ambient record that he did though with Michael Brook is phenomenal, and I asked him and he just jumped in. And so, he's in Amsterdam, Warren's in Detroit. So we're kind of just doing this, email thing. And so that's what I was working on before all this shit started. And Peter's been kind of like one of these really energized, like I'm going to put all my energy into creativity. So he's been sending me a lot of stuff. So it's been keeping me going.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, that's ambient stuff, family music that's
Yeah.
actually engaging with your family. Yeah. Maybe one day that'll be a thing, man. Just
Yeah. Right.
making music for your child.
Well,
That's
well, I mean,
wholesome shit, dude.
Robin Guthrie is funny. I found this just like a couple weeks ago, long after this project was like half done. But Robin Guthrie from Cocteau Twins has a solo record called "Songs to Help My Children Sleep."
Yeah,
It's already a thing.
that's the level of earnestness though you get to, man. It's just like
I know, right?
there's nothing more goth than having a kid, right? It's just like
I mean, definitely the way I do it. I think.
when you go past death and it's just life and you're just sinking into just fucking biology, man. It's
It's
just
intense. It's intense. I try to tell people like when I've never been. I was really comfortable with death before having a kid. It's like I can handle dying. I don't give a shit. But like, there's something way more deeply frightening about like losing that connection with your kid.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's more frightening than just expiring.
No, that's what people say, and I assume you care about the future more, just on a general social level. I mean, I guess you cared about the future in the first place, but
Yeah. No, but I
but
mean,
yeah,
I would have been more inclined to just be like, oh, let's party while the ship's going down. I mean,
yeah,
that wasn't necessarily the core of my attitude, but I could kind of like indulge that
yeah.
sentiment now and again. But it's not very forthcoming these days.
No, yeah, that's over, man. Yeah, that kind of nihilism. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, man. Well, sick, dude. I don't know, like, I mean, you're not doing any like Vaura's kind of like between albums, right? Album cycles.
Actually, spent last night kind of rounding out the first complete demo, so we're working on that too. Actually, yeah.
Sick,
Yeah, same
sick,
way.
man.
Just sending stuff back and forth because I think the world's kind of going to be doing a lot of this for a little bit longer.
Well, dude, this is what's fucking with my head is just the indefinite nature of it, man. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you told me this is going on for 2.5 years, that's a
Yeah.
long time. But I'd be like, all right, let's get the plan going. But I just,
Right.
I can't. I sort of live my life on the like 6 month plan, the 4 month. Just like I know what I'm doing for the next 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I'm fine. But not knowing. But it's like just to not be able to know what's up with another gig, like when you can, and then when the shit, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. In any
I just
case,
kind of set my head at 2 years. Like, I
yeah,
mean, I had respiratory issues when I was a kid, and I have sleep apnea.
Oh, I
So
didn't
I'm
know
not
that.
fucking with this in any way, shape, or form, And it goes
Yeah,
back to the
yeah.
thing with the kid. It's just like I can't really afford to like be brave with,
Yeah.
with this, and I can wait out. I can wait out a kind of like year or two hiatus till it's just like straight up safe. You know what I
You
mean?
really you're gonna quarantine for like 2 years or something, even if they lift, even if everyone else just goes back to shit after like six
Not
months or something.
quarantine, but I mean, I think I'll probably be more of a kind of like weirdo about it than some will. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I'll probably just be more hard. I always was that way a little bit when it came to sickness, like just as a result of upbringing. But like now, it's just like if the stakes are life and death, you know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah, dude.
spend a lot of, I
Yeah.
spend a lot of my time home alone anyway. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, what do you do day job wise again? You've told me a million times. I always forget. It's like computer shit, or what's the vibe?
Well, I mean, in New York, I was doing computer stuff. That's
Yeah.
part of why I have sort of that some of the outlook I have about tech is because I was doing like viral ad tracking for like an ad research firm, like
Oh,
right at the
right.
beginning of YouTube. So it was my job to basically like look at like shareable digital media, YouTube, Facebook, things like that through the lens of like corporate advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like my job was to relay to other brands like here's what's working, here's how here's
Yeah.
what's not working, which had all these like crazy philosophical implications because you're asking questions like Ray-Ban is trying to figure out like how much uh, fakery people will think is cute versus how much they'll feel suckered by.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
brands who are like kind of trying to figure out like how much can we lie to people and people still think it's cute. So but that's what I
Yep.
used to do. But when I moved down here, it was full time, you know, dad, like kind of like house husband type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. It's just by the way, I love having like legit good friends for years and not even knowing what they do for
I
a day
know.
job. That to me speaks something about the musician and artist life. Like it's just doesn't. It's just
Yeah.
day is nothing. It's just night. Just
Uh-huh.
night friends, man. I love it.
I know, it's for real. No, but I just started right before all this. I just started at School of Rock teaching guitar and bass.
Oh, right, right. You told me that. That's sick, dude. You're doing yeah, you're doing like a post-punk class and a black metal class with
Yes,
like little kids and shit.
yeah. So, as everything has gone remote and people can't go to the school, one of the things they're doing is the master class. But for a master class, uh, with 10 to 17-year-old kids, mostly like master class is like introduction to, you know what
Right.
I mean? So,
Yeah.
it was really cool. It's fun. I had a like young kid, probably 10 or 11, the other day, like shredding the riff to "Damaged Goods" by Gang of Four.
Oh shit. That's
Great.
so sick, man. Yeah. No, because yeah, I told you I taught at a similar thing, a New York City guitar school. It's like it's more guitar centric, but like
Mhm.
similar thing. And I was like, I was just before I moved to LA. I ended up having to not do it because I moved out here. But I was like designing a curriculum for like like a group class that was gonna be,
Yeah.
I guess, no wave post punk like weirdo rock shit, from like 1980 to now.
Right.
It's
It's been
great,
an
man.
interesting experience. I mean, it's like I've always wrestled with my online presence. Over the years, it's like between music and people who just want to hear what promote your projects and like hear a joke or see a meme now and again. But then I had all this like long posts about this and that. It's like it took me till this point to realize that like kind of in a like that I do well in a kind of like teacher framework, but like mixing that with like bands and fans and like stuff like that. It's like oh, that was always the disconnect. Nobody liked being spoken to like I was the teacher, but it was just that's just journalistic tone of voice. You're
I
like,
I
oh, I have
know, man.
an interesting to say. I'm going to speak about it as if I know. You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah,
like,
no,
yeah,
no, that's interesting. Yeah, it's just there's different genres of how to address people. Like that's what I was talking to someone. They were like, It's like when people call like Hunt Hendricks like pretentious and shit. I'm
Right.
like, dude, that's just philosophy. That's just what
Exactly.
philosophy
He just
sounds like.
knows
He's
what he's
not
talking about.
pretentious.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you just you just think philosophy sounds pretentious, which
Right.
actually is sort of a
Exactly.
valid
Yeah. No.
criticism. But I mean, then
Right.
then Descartes is then also a pretentious jerk off.
Sure.
Like, whatever,
Sure.
you know. But
Well, we've kind of got this interesting situation now where like it's different from pre-internet or from like maybe 20 years ago when like being into like somebody like Slavoj Žižek was just like you're the guy who like reads politics and whatever. But now everybody's into politics, everybody's into philosophy, but the vibe is you're supposed to know all about it, but just make jokes about it. You know
right,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly, exactly,
like
yeah,
a meme or a lull, kind of like joking about Zizek's mannerisms, but actually talking about his ideas. Like
yeah,
it's not
and
something you do.
and yeah, and you don't have to know a ton about these thinkers to be able to have a cocktail party back and forth
Exactly.
with somebody over them because you just get the lay of the land. I mean, I'm as guilty about that of that as a lot of people. But what the fuck is I gonna say? Oh yeah, but yes, like your Facebook vibe though. Like I know what you're saying. How like you definitely get on some actual writing on Facebook, like
Yeah.
actual like legitimate like pieces of writing that are very thoughtful and like informed. I mean, I assume you edit those, right? And like go
See,
or
that's
do
that's also part of the problem. I think people think I sit around and like, I'm tailoring this and I'm working really hard and I'm gonna take like 4 hours or 3 days and then I'm editing in Word and then I'm gonna post. But that's just like that's pure compulsion.
word.
It's
Well,
addiction. I mean, it's like the job that I had required me to be on social media from the time I woke up to the time I left work. And like when it comes to like all the addiction stuff, I was in school at the time and still learn. We're all still kind of like learning how to like speak about politics. I mean, I used to be a billion times worse than I am now, especially. I mean,
worse. Why?
way worse. Well, just like I was much more of a sort of like militant atheist, like really more poorly tempered, more quick to an insult. Like I hadn't kind of like paid as close of attention to like how to phrase things so as not. I mean, I still think that like when we talk about things like a shit post or like the kinds of things that generate engagement, they're the kinds of things that are designed to poke people. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
So it's like you kind of have this choice. You can poke people and get people engaged, but kind of be annoying, or you can very carefully couch everything and like then maybe 10 people like read all 800 words and engage thoughtfully, and most everybody else will just go by.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, like TLDR is like
Right.
kind of one of the darkest. I mean, that's kind of dark, man.
Oh
It's like
no, for real.
Too long didn't read. It's almost just making fun of the idea of like
Yeah.
investing any energy. But yeah, man. Well, I mean, but if those posts, I mean, this is for anyone that people listening. I mean, just Josh's Facebook. There's these very thoughtful, I think very thoughtful,
Thanks.
political posts, that are kind of. They seem to be sort of like on the they're often on the like well actually tip, but like not like being contrary, like just on some like just some like taking something a level further, being like it's okay to say this, but when you say this you're actually saying this. What if it's a third thing? Like just sort of that kind of level
Right.
of shit. And I mean, I'm impressed at how cogent and hooked up they are without even doing editing and stuff. And I wonder why. Yeah, I wonder why you don't just sort of channel that into more like just being like, okay, this isn't compulsive. I'm writing political pieces. I mean, like, you don't want to just blog or just do something.
I mean, I actually had a professor friend the other day say like there's things that you write that I could use in my classes if it was in a blog,
Yeah,
but I can't like say link to your Facebook post. And I thought
yeah,
about I've done it so many different ways. I used to publish in magazines. I used to write for everybody from like Bust to
yeah. I saw
I
you
did
in
it
that,
did a
and
piece in the Daily Beast and different
I
stuff.
remember that. Yeah,
Talkhouse and so then it was more like, okay, like you should stop posting on Facebook as much and just pitch, just like publish. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And then I kind of hit a wall with the idea of publishing, and didn't write anything for quite a while. But over the years, I've kind of like my Facebook feed has pared down in terms of people who like actually pay attention. I mean, I'm friends with all kinds of people who have like probably long since unfollowed me because they don't want to see all this stuff all the time. But the people who are still there are usually like, you know, people who are interested in talking about the shit I'm interested in. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, it's like it's still kind of like it's hot. It's, you know, uh, that stuff moves my thinking forward. You know what I mean? I think people think, oh, you like he thinks he's just like telling everybody what's up. And it's like, no, it's like when I post that stuff and then I have the sort of people who do interject, kind of like having the kind of conversations that I have, it's like I walk away from that stuff like completely, you know, sometimes with my mind completely changed. You know what I
You
mean?
do. This is good. Yeah, yeah. Well, so then in that case, saying it's compulsive is not, maybe the genesis of it is, or the initial impetus is compulsive, but I mean, if you go away feeling like you had some kind of substantive exchange, then it was good.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, usually when I post some shit, I mean, I don't post anything on Facebook other than self-hype
Right,
ever
right.
anymore. And occasionally I'll like someone's thing.
I mean, that's a
But
good way to do it. I mean,
I've weaned myself off because it's just when it comes to social takes, I just don't even. I'll post some shit when I would post some shit, and the second I start to get the critical replies, I'm like, I don't care enough about what I said to even have this debate. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
not even like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's just like I don't even stand by what the fuck I was saying
right.
enough to have a back and forth. You know? So
Well,
yeah,
one of the fucked up things is like one of the things you want to do as a thinker or a writer is come up with original ideas, right? You want to kind of like
yeah,
not just say what everybody else is saying, and like social incentives, social media incentives, like reward that strongly, like to just
yeah.
kind of cheerleading. But then there's been this whole kind of like, you know, I mean, now contrarian is a bad word because there's this idea, you know, somebody who's just takes what everybody else is saying and then says the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So you have this like hall of mirrors where you're like, okay, well, how can I say something interesting because everybody else isn't saying it? How can I like I've looked for I don't post thoughts if I don't think that they're maybe a little bit you know, original.
Yeah.
But like then how do you weasel your way out of like just appearing like you're like, well, actually, you
Yeah,
know
but
what I mean?
but see this thing. Yeah, no. Well, actually, shouldn't have a bad name because well, actually, that's literally what thought is. It's like well, actually, I mean that's or not thought, but
Right, right.
critique. Critical thought is about well, actually. So it's just like people are just like,
Yeah.
stop trying to shut down my like feelings and shit. It's just like I don't know, man. It's like you came out here saying some shit. I'm gonna try to add, but yeah, I don't know. I like Twitter. It's funny you going in different directions, man, because you quit Twitter. I'm just into Twitter and YouTube, man. I like this lowbrow shit, dude. I like just like jokes.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something deep in the stupid fucking joke, but there's like some kind of like nugget of some kind of you know, I don't know. It's I've found a way to engage with Twitter that's not poisonous.
Right.
It doesn't
But
I
I think
don't
the fact
you
that we
know.
have to do that sort of like shows that like that's really where its reward structure lies. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's what's tricky for me with it is like I think Twitter's if you're into like news and you're into philosophy and you're into all this sort of stuff, like I mean, it's incredible. You get everything immediately. Um, it's much better. You know, I mean, if I'd generally rather watch Twitter than during a debate than I would like to watch the debate.
Oh, big time. Big time. Yeah.
And in a way, that's because you actually might have more solid fact checking going on. You might have more like deep takes on some shallow thing somebody just said. But then the dark thing is that the reality of like how things have evolved is that the Twitter conversation over the debate is actually what matters more than the debate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Which just it starts to the levels of abstraction start to spiral and freak me out.
Yeah. I don't know. Somehow the dopamine maze of Twitter, I'm now scurrying around it in a way that I feel like I feel like it's multiplying joy. I mean, it's increasing
Yeah.
my powers in a non-hierarchical, decentralized way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Horizontal.
yeah, It's very horizontal. It's very rhizomatic.
Okay.
Yeah, no, well, just these people, like they're like 20 years old. They got like the anime avatars and shit. I love some cats. I don't even know what gender they are. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
like, we'll find out later. I don't know their real name.
Hmm.
Um, I get a lot from these from these folks with an X. Ugh.
Right.
Um, but yo, but so like, do you consider yourself as much a writer as a musician, or is it kind of just you don't even think that way, or
I mean,
you do more music than you do
it all
writing, but
collapses into I. It's funny because I did when we started doing Vaura, I was like making this kind of like Blacklist was so like manifesto oriented and hyper intellectual and all these like quotes from poets and philosophers
it
and
sounds like, and blacklisted. That's a reference to some like commie like blacklisted,
yeah,
just
yeah.
like left AF type shit. Yeah, yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
so, when with Vara, I was like, okay, this tone of voice is just not doing it for me right now. I want to really like focus more on like like poetry and imagination and these kinds of things. But it's like ideas always creep back in, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
the things that I preoccupy myself with, they can't help but find their way into the work. I don't really, sometimes I try to like with the first Vara record, and I still do. Like people are like, "Well, when are you going to print the lyrics?" I'm like, "Well, not printing the lyrics is part of the idea of the album. Like you're not
Okay.
supposed to be able to understand me very well. It's supposed to be kind of obscured. It's the whole record is supposed to be about hiddenness. It's like it's not um and it has all these ideas behind it that I've really just never told anyone.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about Selenion, right? Not the missing. You're talking
Right,
about the
right,
actual
right.
first one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. But whereas, with the last one, I'm fine with talking about it. It was never meant to be a secret. It was never, but I mean, to differing degrees, I like it to be up front, and then other times I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
always there, but like I make conscious choices as to like how much to hand people, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's like and I guess Azar Swan, that's Zora. Those are all her lyrics and songs,
Hmm.
basically, or like
Right.
yeah. So that's sort of
I mean,
that's in the
we
same page with
collaborated some. We collaborated some on the Savage Exile lyrics, which really had more to do with like, God, I would almost like interview her and get her to say things and
Yeah,
write them
yeah, yeah,
down, and I'd be like, that's a line, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So we've collaborated in that way,
yeah, yeah.
but no, that's her baby for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting because like there's not a lot of it just your stuff is like very. I mean, yeah, at least Blacklist, but I mean, yeah, some of the other stuff. It's like explicitly left wing, I guess you could say, or at least like left intellectual. Right? I mean, whatever that means. That can mean a lot of things. But
Yeah.
like goth music, I don't know. That isn't. I'm sure this is like the millionth time you fielded this question or thought about this. But I mean, there as far as all the different styles of punk and stuff, right? I mean, I feel like goth and post punk is like there's not a ton of like explicitly leftist punks. I mean, there's some, but it's certainly not all a bunch of right wing shit. But it's like the romantic and the personal and the fantastic and the like purely erotic and the violent. A lot of the time, it's like not like ideological. I don't know. Or am I wrong? Or
Well, I mean, I think there's it's funny after I just gave this post punk thing, I was like, because my whole approach to that class was I basically was like, okay, so here are all these bands that were doing wild, cool, like underground, like art world shit before, you know, uh, Bowie, Iggy, like um, Velvets, Kraftwerk, and then I was like, I jokingly used the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon thing, and I was like, the Sex Pistols is the Prism, and then like the Rainbow is like post punk, all the cool shit that where basically everybody was like, who cares like how much the dudes from Joy Division liked the Sex Pistols show because the music they made after was like clearly, you know, Velvet Underground and Kraftwerk and all this kind of stuff, but
right?
yeah, so I mean, I think there's so much of it, but like this is just a Mercy who's like always one of my favorites, and they're hyper political. He's super left wing, so
Are
like
they okay? Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, like
Oh, my mother Russia.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he's like he's and Vision Thing is a reference to like Bush Senior, and I'm about to hyper political record.
Yeah, that I don't really know that one, but yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry. I mean, even when they weren't speaking about like specific topical issues, like it always kind of had this like we're the children of the Cold War kind of, Killing Joke was like
I was gonna say Killing Joke is pretty left,
yeah. The atomic age, so like that's always the realm of like goth that I most identified with. I was never as much of the kind of like Batcave or like just dark wave walking through this. I mean, I've had tinges of that, what I mean?
Yeah. No, I feel, it was more of the guitar based kind of
yeah.
You like Christian Death though, right? That's like
I never figured out how to get into them. I
mean, you don't fuck with Only Theater of Pain?
I mean, that's the one that I've listened to, but
yeah, that's the one that people,
it just doesn't bring, like, it's not that I don't like it, it just doesn't bring me back in the way that other records do. It's like if somebody puts it on, I'll be like, cool, I like this, but it just doesn't personally like suck me in, I personally listen to like the same not the same 10 records, but the same 50 records, like over and over and over again.
yeah. Space TN22 says, I hate Christian Death. I can understand hating Christian Death. I mean, it's preposterous music, but I mean, I kind of love, I don't know, like when I think of goth can mean so many things though when people say goth, and it's a goofy word. You know what? I almost borderline apologize for using the word goth, Josh, because it's like I'm already just asking you to answer for a word that isn't even. But post-punk. I don't know. Post-punk.
Well, no, I mean, I actually that's one of my not gripes, but I guess the thing is that frustrates me in a way is like Sisters are goth, Killing Joke is goth, all this stuff, but like people tend to sort of like if it's smart or if it's literate or if it's political. Be like, we must be separate from goth because goth can only be, you know what I mean? It sort of determine the term itself according to like, it has to be sort of hokey. It has to be sort of juvenile.
Yeah, like inherently, really, because no one, no one really calls himself goth.
There's tons of fucking great goth music. It's super smart and
So. I love Christian Death. Yeah, Christian Death is more LA punk. Anaks and memes, as Agustin says. To me, they're almost like the precursor of like Motley Crue. It's like Motley Crue meets Jane's Addiction meets like Bataille or whatever.
Well, that's always how I sell early Queensryche records. I'm like these are like death rock riffs with like priest vocals,
Queensryche as a goth band.
Well, yeah. I mean,
sick.
I mean, think about the kind of like what's the all the riffs on Rage for Order, like it could be like a Community FK kind of like thing,
No shit. I guess I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that one. I mean, Mindcrime and Mindcrime and Empire I fuck with a lot. I mean, that's definitely not as
Rage for Order, the one before that, they actually did with because they're from Pacific Northwest, so they did it with Dave Ogilvy, who did a bunch of Skinny Puppy records.
Oh, the guy from Pigface or whatever, or I guess all those dudes were like in
a bunch of industrial, the Canadian industrial stuff. So
yeah. No shit. All right, it all comes together because I love some Queensryche. We've talked about that.
Oh yeah. But, no, that was the Vaura PZ kind of
like connection, man. Yeah, because someone Richter from Toilet of Hell reviewed Sparta, and he was just like, man, I'm gonna get shit for saying this, but like there's some Queensryche in there. I'm not even gonna explain. I was like, bro, you don't have to explain. You're just
please.
You're just hearing those little little guys in there. Yeah, man. I mean, like, I'm interested. I don't know, man. I know, because I know you're saying like a lot of these post-punk bands had like did have a left-wing vibe, but like I don't know. There's not a ton of. You are one of the few people that I roll with, or just that I can think of who are like super like overtly into like theory and philosophy and shit. You're like vocal about it and shit.
Right.
I mean, Hunter is another one, obviously. He's kind of on a different tip. I mean, he's actually kind of like trying to start his whole own like thing with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is super deep. And I want to get him on here also and talk about that. But like, there aren't that many. I don't know. Like, are there like, I mean, do you have a bunch of like colleagues that are like openly kind of like like
Not really.
being
I
writers that
mean,
deal with theory and like it's all up in the lyrics and shit, you know? I mean,
no, I mean, I have like, I mean, Peter School Wars from Weird is probably the closest, I mean, that was always, we were, Peter obviously is fine artist and, went to Cal Arts and stuff like that. And I think read most philosophy, not as a philosophy student, but as an art student, because you kind of start like having to be, I guess conversant in theory as a
yeah,
contemporary artist.
at least nowadays that's like part of it or something.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so but his gallerist Miguel Abreu is the publisher of like he's associated with like Urbanomic Press. So like
Really? Really?
so
This is Peter from Weird, you're saying?
yeah, so there's all these wild connections. So like I remember
I
like
did not
before I
know
moved
that.
to New York, I had this like Zizek DVD that was filmed at Deitch Project, and Miguel gives the opening, spiel about Zizek, and then Zizek comes on and does his thing. And I found out later that like I met Peter and we loved all this music, and we also loved all could kind of like talk about theory and he was like, oh yeah, I filmed that DVD, you know what I mean? So
Oh man, yeah. So that's a huge connection right there. Cause
yeah,
yeah, cause I wasn't really part of that hang, like the Weird Records hang when that was happening in like the late aughts. I mean, I know who Peter is. I know he did that label, Handmade Birds. But I had no idea there was an Urbanomic connection. I mean, that's like fucking base. That's based AF,
yeah,
dude. It's
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
Urbanomic,
So
dude.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
like kind of always been in this like orbit generally. When Peter did that, Hunter did the reading group for the new Reza Negarestani book. And Peter went to it, and then Reza was in town. And Peter's like,
Oh,
"Oh, I want to hang out with Reza," and so I like hung out with Reza.
when was that? When did he do the reading group? Motherfucker didn't invite me. When was that?
I
It
don't know.
must have been
Maybe I
recently.
don't know if Hunter ran it, but he was part of it.
Yeah.
It was like middle of like
Yeah.
fall last year.
I
Summer
would have
fall.
fucking yeah, man. I would have loved to do that. Yeah, the Reza
Yeah.
book. I started reading that, and it's sitting there,
Psychonopy or
man.
Intelligence in Spirit.
Intelligence and Spirit.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's really. I'm loving how he's fucking with. He's taking on land on the Twitters, man. Have you been checking that out?
I didn't know. If he was gonna stay on Twitter because I know he was like kind of like getting weird. He loved it and he was like, "I love this too much. I got to get off." But I didn't know that. It was funny when I hung out with them. His wife was like, "You know who he reminds me of?" Talking about me. She's like, he reminds me of Nick," and I was like, "What?"
Wait. Reza,
I guess my black T-shirt, my mannerisms, or something like that. I was like,
Reza. Reza's wife said that you reminded her of Nick Land. Rough, dude.
I mean, but
I find myself smacking my lips a lot on this podcast, at least when I do the solo ones, and that's like every Land interview I've ever heard. He's like, no,
yeah.
but yeah. Oh yeah,
But
man.
speaking of Nick Land, we gotta talk about this connection between your recent shit and mine.
Oh yeah. You want to? I don't want to talk. I do want to talk about your new shit for sure. I'll talk about my new. Oh wait, this is talking. Reza is back on Twitter. Just search for him. I don't remember what his handle is. He's back on there. He's cool. He's he's getting pretty. Him and Land are having like a pretty. At least a couple days ago, he was just like basically calling Land an edgelord and being like, you're being lazy and whatnot. And Land was basically just like, stop being a cuck. Like, just I don't know. He doesn't use that word, but it's essentially a highbrow version of that. But in any case, yeah, no. We should talk about the connections between our new shit. But I don't want to give too much away about that essay.
Oh no!
Because that shit I wanna.
I'm not. Trust me. I wasn't gonna do that anyway.
Yeah, because I mean, no one's gonna care anyway when it comes out. But I wanna. But yeah, you mean like our two new records? You mean?
Yeah. Because I don't really know of other people who are like kind of like as steeped in this as we are.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing, it's like I don't know, man. Sparta. I did like a solo video talking about this shit. That it's like. I mean, it's like almost the most It's almost the most unacceleration. It's like the more like acceleration and neo reaction I fuck with. It's like almost like that project just digs its heels even more into like humanism and
Mhm.
just being just this sappy like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
just like, what about love, man? Like, why can't it's not about the robots, dude? Like, it's like, it's
Right,
just like,
right.
man, like, I don't like IQ scores, like, that sucks, bro. Like, like, that's kind of like my,
Uh,
like, but that's like the more I digest, the more I, like, I don't know. But your shit has been kind of like cold, but you're not into the right wing side of things, but there's a cold pessimism to it or something. I don't know.
I guess it boils down to probably something I kind of say a lot somewhere in a lot of the long Facebook posts is I kind of think that like you have the like I always it's always good to make the distinction between Marx's analysis, right, and Marx's prescriptions and political programs, because you can be down with like his analysis of capital, but like then you like read about how he thinks you should like start a revolution in a nation state. Be like, fuck that.
Yeah, yeah, it's the
It's a little,
descriptive versus the proscriptive,
it's a
essentially,
little
which people.
similar. Like, I guess I kind of worry, fear, am horrified that the basic analysis is correct. And out of that horror comes an intense opposition, kind of like almost like a visceral, emotional one. But like, because I feel the, the potential truth of the analysis so strongly, uh, it doesn't really, I mean, in some ways, it makes me react in this sort of like fist in the air kind of neo reactionary kind of way. But in other ways, I'm just like, fuck, like that shit's gonna be really dark and sad and horrid. You know what I mean? Like, so that was really the
Well,
emotion that record came from, I guess.
yeah, yeah, man. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I see that shit. It's like the most reductive thing, but I mean, it's almost like I see that land shit as just being like it's like Mark Fisher's like writes a book like capitalist realism. Is there no alternative? And then it's like land is like, no. Like, it's like that's just basically like it's just that's it, right? I mean, and then it's
Uh,
just like either you're gonna get depressed or you're gonna man up and just fucking be like, take it. It's like this weird kind of. It's like the machismo of passivity or something. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
It's like don't be. It's like you're a pussy if you try to resist
Well,
just
that's
the
yeah.
the capitalist like liquidating of the human. And if like you're a real tough guy, you'll fucking take it like a man or something, right? You know what I mean? It's like
Right. Which is it kind of makes it ironic when it's like they're the ones calling everybody cucks. It's just
yeah.
like
Well, they don't
like
in that sphere, but yeah.
well, yeah, no.
But
But I guess I don't know, man. Like it goes back to this whole kind of experience I guess I've had with like trying to write and trying to be online and a lot of these things that we've been talking about with like journalism and YouTube and things like that. It's just like my view of things has gotten so dark not because I read Nick Land, but because I'm like people really feel like programmed. And this a lot of this shit sounds so 60s to say, like, oh man, fucking people are programmed, like,
yeah,
but like in a really there's a I love to refer to this William Gibson essay that he wrote. It's in his collection of essays. I think it's a very short one for like Time magazine, and he's like, we imagined robots. We knew that they were coming, but when we imagined them in like the 20s and the 30s and mid-century, we imagined that they would. We didn't imagine that they would sit on a desk, that their brain would sit on a desk. You know what I mean?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So for me, it's like a lot of this, and where I kind of start to vie with a lot of the CCRU metaphors is like when you start just seeing processes without these really overt visual kind of like physical metaphor, like you don't need to picture somebody like if everybody was being had a thing on their head, right, like you've seen in a million movies, and that was mind control coming from Facebook or whatever, whatever particular person was trying to influence them through Facebook, that would
Yeah.
horrify everyone. But because there's no wire and because there's this sense of agency, nobody really sees it that way. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah. I mean, but that's the fucking microchip in the head. That's less horrifying to me in a way because you're like, oh, it's a person, and then robots and the government. You know,
Exactly.
there's at least like these agents and subjects and objects. When you get into
Right.
this internet dopamine shit, like you're dealing with processes that don't even seem to have subjects and objects and agency. There's inside and outside. Are
Right.
fucking. I mean, that's where I get on the pessimistic land shit, where or like the negative Deleuze vibe, where I'm
Right.
like, I'm getting hyped up on dopamine and thinking shit and like plugged into online, and I'm just like, I'm like, I'm not a person, man. These are processes. These
Right.
are just a bunch of machines interacting,
Hmm.
and there's no me. It's just fucking mechanistic shit. It's just like, I mean, so
Right.
that's a lot more scary to me than being like, oh, I'm me and I'm being controlled. It's like, at
Which I
least I
think is
have a
what
me then, you know?
I,
It's like,
that's really where I kind of like become this like person. Like that's why I'm interested in some of these theories. But I feel like I am fundamentally. It's like when you look at the culture of the thinkers. Like I mean, that's a really humbling view of the self and of the world around you. And like even though they're like, oh, just don't do anything, just like let it happen. You know what I mean? Like it's not a collection of like people who seem humbled by their insights. You know what I mean?
I agree with
So,
you. There's a very arrogant neo-reactionaries are so anyway, yeah.
and
That
it's
yeah.
sort of like
Yeah.
it's sort of like where you get into the post politics thing. It's just like, well, I don't know, like you're saying post politics, but this all sounds like politics. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing of like accelerate. Like, I mean, I'm not the first person to say this. It's like, how can you have acceleration ism? How can there be a praxis or an agenda when the point is just sit back and take it in the ass? I mean, it's just like so what's thought then? I mean, you know what I mean? But it's like,
right,
I don't know. I a lot of time I think of my parents who like they're both shrinks. Like mom's a psychologist, dad's a psychiatrist, like a private practice, and I just think of like my mom. If I explained Nick Land to my mom, she would just be like, he sounds depressed. Like, you know what I mean? It'd just be like, right? I mean, I mean, I don't know what's in his heart, but
right.
I mean, I do relate to that shit on the level
Yeah.
that I relate to being depressed. I mean, which I don't have a huge problem with nowadays, but I mean, it's definitely it's not the expression to think that way. You know what I mean? It's like, um,
Right,
but
right.
but
Interesting.
yeah, I don't know. I never really cared about tech though before any of this shit. Before I started checking out Land and these guys, I didn't. I was not a big sci-fi head as a kid. You know, maybe fantasy D&D a little bit, but
Neither was
not
I. Well, I mean, I like
you weren't.
science fiction movies, but I would have always like classified myself as somebody who's like into like horror movies and like foreign movies. That was like my thing. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I always dug like Blade Runner, and I was raised on like Blade Runner and Terminator. But I never like read sci-fi or and
Yeah.
it wasn't any of that that sort of brought me to the. It was really, I have to say, it was that post 2016 thing where I was like, what is the point in writing if I sort of see the sort of like engagement ecosystem the way that I see it? Why do I see, why does it feel this useless? And that's when I kind of started reading more about like, that's when I read The Dark Enlightenment and started reading some of the Nick Land stuff. That wasn't the main thing, I mean, that wasn't the main thing that informed how I came to see it, but that's how I got into like the techie futuristic.
Yeah. Dark Enlightenment, that's like his wackest thing. But I don't know. Yeah. Um
Oh no, yeah, of course. Like the thing Numina is like,
that's the shit. But and actually some of his new articles though are really fucking cool. Like just these little things
I
he
think
writes that
like most philosophers, he's most like digestible and lucid and sensible and interesting and charming in spoken word interviews where he's not writing.
you think really?
I
Yeah, he,
think
has,
so.
he had this one called this thing Disintegration that he wrote like a couple months ago, like, and
Okay,
it's
I
in
haven't seen it.
Jacobite. Anyway, but the fuck was I gonna say? Yeah, like yeah, it just the tech vibe is just a lot, sometimes with this politics shit, man. I really just I think about. I know this is gonna sound like a very apolitical some of my friends would be like, that's the most just whatever. Like, I don't know what people would say about this, but like, so much of politics is just, it boils down to people's personalities, man. And like, I know that's some really impractical thing, but it's just like the kind of person that would be a hardcore neo-reactionary is a certain kind of high math brain, low
Sure.
empathy
Mm-hmm.
person. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's a, sometimes it's just, I see these like ideological differences. It's just, sometimes I'm just like, I don't like certain types of folks. I don't really wouldn't want to hang out with, you know what I mean?
All right.
Like, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't, so what, is that person a piece of shit? I mean, what do you do with that difference between people? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but it seems though, like, it seems like what's happened though with, online culture and the culture wars is that it seems like people with different temperaments, different natural personalities, like a tech
All
bro
sports.
versus an art cat, that different people, it's not like they just have different opinions about what should happen or different agendas. It's like they actually have different descriptive, objective assessments of what's going on in the world. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, different people like us think that different things are factually true
No. Yeah.
than a tech bro thinks. And I think, you know, like,
Yeah.
that, I know I obsess on this shit, but like with those reactionaries and with land and shit, it's like, I really think it's that genetic determinism and that fetishizing of IQ and shit like that.
Right.
That's like the nub of the truth claim.
Is it?
That I feel like that's what those dudes latch onto, and they're like, that's where I pivot into
Okay.
just red pilled vision. Like, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? And then it's just like those of us that are like, I don't believe that assessment. It's just, you know what I'm saying? It's like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's the descriptive thing that the proscriptive shit
Interesting.
hinges. It's, as far as I can. I mean, you know, it's not just Nazis versus non-Nazis. I just mean, you know, even just left versus right. Does
Yeah.
that resonate with you at all, or do
No,
you
for
see that?
sure.
Or
I mean,
yeah,
I think you talk about cave Twitter. It's like I don't think I really once I it's again. I mean, I'm the same way with TV shows and records and podcasts. It's just like I can kind of like be like, okay, there's this thing over here, and maybe I'll take the time to like really like figure out what it is and like get the lay of the land, and maybe I'll engage with it, or maybe I'll become part of it. And then other times I'm just like. And then it was like at the point there became a such thing as like there became the word cave Twitter. I was just like, I think I'm done with this. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
Well, you have a
so,
kid, and there's a limit
I
on how.
don't really know what the people are like. You know, I mean, I got to know Justin Murphy a little bit over email. We did the podcast, but
He's cool. He's awesome.
yeah, no, I mean, he seems like he's you know, uh, but then again, it's like one of those things where you're like I found that guy on Twitter kind of like a million years ago, like not a million years ago, a long time ago, and I reached out to him because I thought it was cool. He was espousing this like radical left, kind of like futurism, but he was really into empiricism. And he was like, I'm a rigorous, statistic. I do all these kinds of like scientific studies, and I'm like, oh man, it's so great that somebody on the left has been like like missing this kind of like
Yeah.
empirical rigor for so long. So I reach out to him, and like months after, I'm like, oh yeah, like Justin's awesome. Like people are like, oh yeah, he's hanging out with these all these, and I'm just like, so what? Now do I have to like worry about when I'm going to get canceled because I did Justin's podcast? I don't. It's that shit. It just gets so exhausting. I'm like, dude.
I keep trying to get canceled, but I'm just too fucking woke, dude. I just can't pull it off, dude. Anyway, but the fucking well, you know what though? I think a lot of you said like someone like Justin, you're saying he's got that vibe of like you liked his vibe of like that he's like left, but has this, he's into like empiricism and empirical, shit
Yeah.
and like actual research. I think that does connect up. The reason I think that connects up with neo reaction and right wing shit like reaction is that like a lot of those guys like on the mold bug side of things, they because they're coders,
Mm-hmm.
because they're coming out of code and tech and shit. They're all about things that work. They're engineers.
Right.
They're not like they're not like what's fair and what's just and what's moral. They're not like what's
Yeah.
beautiful. They're not even so much about what's true, except insofar as a system of meaning can be stable and therefore be considered true. So it's like, so that's why I think a lot of
Right.
that.
And it's funny because I come at it from this place where I'm like, okay, I've been in the world of like theory and philosophy, and like a lot of it's pretty left wing. I mean, I went to the school, like I came from the Frankfurt School, so everybody's sitting around going like, okay, how did scientific thinking get us the Holocaust, and how can we keep the Enlightenment but fix it, So I can't, and then you're also at the same time you're inundated with a lot of post-structuralist sort of like empiricism as part of like imperialism and all this, and I get that. I mean, it's not that I don't subscribe to those critiques, but then you watch that sort of spiral out of control to where you're seeing people just read. One of the worst things about theory books, period, is you just read stuff and you're just like, I just read like 15 assertions that like this person didn't feel the need to verify or like argue for or back up at all, and then you have entire, the critique of like left-wing academia is valid to a point on those premises, because people get away with too much, but then you're fucked. You're like, oh, finally somebody's talking about empiricism, and then all your like old left-wing friends are like, you're gonna end up in like eugenics territory before long, and you're like, what? I just want some
Well,
and
dude,
then the minute then you, you turn your back and everybody's like, race realism, fuck yeah, it's just like,
yeah, but see, this is the thing about things that work. Like, just straight up Marxism in its first, whatever, just Marx. I mean, I ain't no professor, but I know that, it's about how things work. I mean, it's not just a proscriptive thing. It's a diagnosis of how capital works on a mechanical level. So it's like, I mean, genetics are part of how things work.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, I understand why certain people on the left, they want to cozy up to, I mean, not to eugenic, like not race realism.
Yeah,
This guy Marcus is, I don't know, man. You can stay on the thread, man. But I what was I gonna say? Yeah, like there are reasons why people on the left want to like at least become not allergic to people who are into these, like, because that NRX shit, it's like Occam's razor shit. You know what I mean? It's like, let's just cut through the shit. How does shit work? And then, they overestimate genetic type shit, but because they're looking for mechanical ways to make shit that actually functions. So I think that's why people on the left are starting to get into that shit. Because it's like, because think about this, right? The kind of theory that I've been into, it's because I've been so non-activist, like trying to get shit done in the world. So like a Kristeva, right? That's still my shit. What practical program can you possibly do with something that's just like, there's a category called the abject. It's somewhere between subject and object. It's the vile muck that comes from unresolved accounts with the mother's body and ties in with the linguistics and the signifier and total. It's like, what? How can you disprove that? There's no. That's like, you know what I mean? That's like, that's beatnik poetry shit. And it's cool for me, man, because I'm just no. But I mean, if you're trying to, like redistribute wealth or like deal with class shit, what are you going to do with that? You know what I mean?
I saw her speak at the new school. It's like, yeah, I mean,
You saw Kristeva speak?
Mm-hmm.
Was it sick? Are you into her?
Yeah. I mean, I've read some of this. I read most of hers and stuff in a course on the sociology of forgiveness, which was an interesting course. So yeah, I mean, she, for instance, like that aspect of some of her writing is really great. Like when you get into like, because that course, it's like a lot of the course names that I had, where it sounds ridiculous, but you do get into things of like, okay, well, how do countries move on after the Rwandan genocide, and like how do we we do have to sort of figure out ways of like political forgiveness, these kinds of concepts have to figure in. So we have to figure out what's forgiveness in the first place. How does it work in our psychology? And she, so somebody like Kristeva has written interesting stuff about that, but it's, yeah, by and
interesting.
Large, some of it gets
well, no, but I guess I haven't read the, I guess I haven't read her stuff that's more explicitly like actually political.
No, but you're right. I mean, she's a Lacanian, and like that was like why I moved to New York. I wanted to like hang out with the Lacanians and like learn all this shit. I did. I like went to their seminars and I took like meticulous notes and stuff, and like
That's sick, dude.
I was like, dude, this is like this is kind of a cult.
It seems kind of cultish. I was kind of thinking it would be sick to just go into Lacanian analysis. That like I can afford that right now.
No,
But
well,
like,
that was the thing. I was super serious about it. I was like, I'm going to become an analyst, and the only way you can do it because
oh
like
yeah, you were gonna do
it's not
that.
an official, you know, you can't like go to college and study Lacan. It's like way too arcane and like not supported by like the things that we certify like psychotherapists for. So literally have to go into this like this weird little cabal, of people where you're like listening to some South American guy who's like got Lacan's like bow tie on and is affecting his like man.
That's creepy.
And
Yeah,
I'm just
man.
like, y'all are like fucking strange.
Yeah, I'm not a joiner, man. I'm not into that shit. But yeah, man. No, Powers of Horror though, and Black Sun. I mean, that's what like my last the record, Simple Answers. That was all Chris Stava and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But so wait a minute. But so wait, okay. Let's bring it back to like to the records though, because we were talking. I just talked about mine a little bit, and then we went off on a fucking tangent about well, not a tangent, but whatever you brought up.
Right.
But what about is Sables? This is the last Vaura record from last year.
Yeah.
If anyone watching doesn't or listening doesn't know Vaura or Josh's music, like you gotta. I mean, you're going to check this shit out. But yeah, the last Vaura record. So Sables. I mean, I've listened to it. The lyrics are not available, right? I searched around to try to find.
They're printed in the record.
Oh yeah, no, because I don't have a physical copy though. I don't.
Yeah.
This is the thing about files, man.
Right.
But yeah. So I mean, are those? I mean, I can make out some of the lyrics on the Lightless ones. That's kind of like the single, right? That's kind of like the banger.
Yeah, that's one of them, I guess. Like
yeah. It's a great tune, man. So yeah, you said that one when we were chatting. You said that that Engaged Land in some way, the Lightless ones, or no, or
well, no, I was just making a joke that it was like my version of Outside, like outsideness. Like it's, I mean, because it's a lot like that song is a lot like what you were talking about what about love, it's kind of the something that I think is really appealing or seductive about like what neo-reactionaries talk about and promise is or their vocabulary traffics in this idea of the outside, which I'm less interested in. Like it's like I go check into like, okay, what's your outside, and I'm like, I'm okay, like I dig this sort of like posturing, like looking for it, but I don't really dig what you're saying it is, you know what I mean? So it's like, I guess for me that track is sort of like using, it's almost also this vague recollection, and I've only read 1984 once and seen it a long time, but the whole secret love affair of Winston, they go to that hidden room or whatever.
I don't even remember, man. I don't even remember what the fuck happens in 1984.
Like, I guess it's like, because what I think is much more interesting about neo-reaction than the answers is the question. It's like we do feel like this really strong impulse to get outside of something. Like we feel completely like locked into this constant flow, you know what I mean? And we don't really feel like any of the things like we do can get us out, So I feel like that song was sort of the what about love? Like maybe this is like these outside, maybe you can create these outside spaces outside of these like cold processes where you actually connect with somebody, and it's unseen, it's not broadcast, it's not seen, it's not that
Okay because that actually would not that use of the word outside would not really fit in with the Landian vibe though, because for him the outside is the cold processes
precisely
for sure.
No, it's more or less inverting it.
right on. So I mean like because I thought when you said it had to do with love, I thought you were going to kind of get on the vibe of like, well, when you love someone or romantic love, like I thought you were going to get kind of French, almost Frenchify the Anglo-ness of it and kind of make it like, oh, well, like, when you are rushing toward outside yourself, it's like, like the desire between two people, you're integrity of your identities kind of dissolve, and so you're going to a place outside of yourself,
Well, it is in a sense.
and it's scary, it's beautiful, but there's a terror to it, or a horror maybe, or
A lot of the first part of that record,
vertigo.
I'll go ahead and give it away. It's really inspired by the writing of Byung-Chul Han, who's a Korean philosopher working in he lives in Germany. He writes a lot of uh, uncool philosophy that, like, nobody seems to like, in a way, like not the neo-reactionaries and not the like hip theory kids, left-wing like DSA theory kids. Like he's a quick way to like annoy people, is in a way, is get them to read his shit. But
Sounds good. What? Yeah.
no,
What's his trip?
but right, like the agony of Eros is the book, and he's talking a lot about, like, narcissistic personalities, and how, in order to connect with somebody, you have to be pulled outside of yourself. So that's the outsideness of that.
Yeah. I could feel that. I could feel that. I kind of I don't know, the whole outside thing. It seems it's like it just kind of sounds like Bataille or something. I mean, it's just like the impossible. I mean, it's just like what
Yeah.
which you can't think, or whatever.
I think the sentiment as like a cultural mood right now has so much to do, though, with like flow, has everything to do with the fact that we're like, I mean, we have, again, this is where I like the idea of like portraying people without agency, the agency that they feel they have, where they're like, I'm deciding to pick up my phone and look at I'm deciding to do all these things. I'm deciding to argue for this political point,
Yeah.
Whereas I think of people as much more darkly automated by most of these processes.
That's yeah.
And I think at some like very subconscious level, people have the sense that they're not really doing what they want to be doing, that they're stuck in something they can't get outside of, and they don't know how to name it. They don't really know how to, much less, start to get free of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's yeah, man.
That's what makes the appeal of this initial sort of like, proposition, of the outside that these guys like to talk about so much. Like, it's seductive.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
about as far as it goes. You know?
Well, that's I don't know, man. You know who's really deep on this, man? Is like, have you read like the Mark Fisher's his PhD thesis, the Gothic Flatline Cybernetic?
I have it, but I haven't read it cover to cover. Yeah.
Oh, dude, yeah, because that's well, I mean, because that shit is, he doesn't use the Landian term, the outside. I don't know, maybe it was
Right.
before that, but he talks about a continuum of the organic and the inorganic.
Okay.
So it's like that vibe. The
Definitely get down with that.
Gothic for him, that like just that interiority isn't the separateness between things, but it's actually just like an infolding of the of the inorganic. Just that, like, everything is just matter, and then organic life is just an infolding, or like an invagination. He says,
That's fascinating. I remember watching this video the other day, and I kind of laughed to myself that I was like, because it's Timothy Morton talking about.
I don't know him.
So he's an ecological philosopher. Wrote books like Dark Ecology, and he wrote a book for Verso. I'm trying to think. It's called. It's not called Humanism, but it's. He's friends with like Jeff Vandermeer, who wrote like Annihilation, the Southern Reach trilogy and stuff like that. And he's kind of one of these friends with like Graham Harmon, the object-oriented philosopher, because
Okay, heard of that, but yeah,
his whole thing about like thinking ecologically is that we have to stop thinking about in the boundaries that we do, that we are all these other kind of like in inanimate things, and we don't really stop where we feel like we stop and end where we feel like we end. And he was like talking to this architecture, curate, like architecture conference curator, who's like drilling him about architecture theory. And he was like, here's how like your theories about ecology like mesh with our ideas about architecture, and I know that whole Fisher book is about architecture, right?
Um,
Thesis?
I don't think so. I mean,
No.
maybe he
Okay.
gets into that like at the end or something. I think I read most of it though.
Okay.
No, it's a lot about cyberpunk. I mean, it's a lot
Okay.
about well, because he says flatline constructs and there's like architecture shit on the cover, but
Okay.
no, it's about cyberpunk and
That
just
probably
like
is why I put it.
just sort of the limits of the human and shit. I mean, I don't other than Videodrome, I don't really even. Oh no, he talks about Blade Runner too.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like cyberpunk via like Deleuze, Baudrillard, and like yeah, just this continuum of the organic and the inorganic, and like Freud's death drive, you know, and just this sort of like this sort of desire, this sort of yeah, this almost like nostalgic longing to like return to an inanimate state, kind of, you know, like at this
Mm-hmm.
death, this sort of thing, you know. But yeah, like the oh, wait, in the comments. Oh yeah, and Axameme says NRX is about exit, but it is also about letting processes happen and you have no control. Yeah, well we were conflating neoreaction and acceleration in a way that is typical but somewhat rigorous, somewhat not rigorous, but I'm not going to go back and re-tease out what we were saying, but yes, yes, neoreaction is more of a
One of
political
my
thing.
things, I mean, one of my things with Near Reaction anyway is that I have like absolutely zero theoretical fidelity or like, ethical fidelity to it at all. It's just a jumping off point to like think about certain things, you know. I mean, I'm happy to get it wrong or to completely rewrite it, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it seems like acceleration is more like rooted in actual continental philosophy. I mean,
Right.
like Land. I mean, even though now he's like just retweeting
No,
Breitbart or whatever the
the
fuck,
whole beginning of
but
the Robin McKay compilation is all early continental philosophy and
yeah, and
art.
I mean, it's like they're getting it's like comes out of Kant. It made me go back and check out Kant, which I actually kind of could grok a little bit of that shit. Like the outside, you know, being like roughly, you know, having to do with like noumenon and like you know fanged noumena, the noumenon and shit. But
Right.
whereas like yeah, neo reaction is a little more like I mean, Moldbug doesn't like fuck with Kant and stuff. He's just talking. I
Right.
mean, he's just talking about like just you know why like democracy doesn't really fucking work. James Woods, James Woods is beyond base, dude. That guy's just a fucking knucklehead. But but
Disappointment.
but man, like so I mean, but like so when you make music though, because like I'm kind of on a vibe though, right? Where I think I'm a little bit more getting sort of more Vora out, more Vora-ish with my approach, man. Where like I mean, all of this esoteric philosophy shit, I'm like really not trying to make I'm really not trying to write songs where you have to know about any of this to
Mhm,
feel
mhm.
what I'm talking
Oh
about. So
yeah,
I am trying to like whittle
that's
it
all.
down somewhat. I mean, is that kind of where you're at with Vora? Like you don't want like
I mean, that's always how I've been. I mean, I even with Blacklist, you know, I think one of the reasons it that confused it straddled the fence in a fucked up way where like people who are like, oh, I'm very intellectual, I have, you know, a degree in literature, I know all this sort of stuff, they expect intellectual music to sort of like have a certain temperament and tone of voice, you know.
right.
And I was like, fuck that, I want that these ideas to come across like the cult.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? So then, you know, people who are like, "Oh, I like this because it sounds like the cult." I was always consciously, you know, and definitely, I think coming from this sort of like French theory background and being big into Lacan, like I love, and you know, whether I'm doing it like initially consciously or whether I sometimes like retroactively kind of like either realize what I've done or decide what I did. You know what I mean? But it's like a lot of phrases that are meant to be to simple phrase that like actually means something, refers to something deep if you have the like little nugget to sort of
Yeah.
go on. But like it doesn't demand of you like, oh, you're not going to dig this track if you've not, you know, read this book. You know what
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because yeah, like I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking about with this, but like how like lyrics, you know, it's good to like Actually, no, I was talking about this. I was sort of talking about this with Kirsten, with my girlfriend, who you know, like she we're just talking about like how lyrics. It's like you know, you can have lyrics that like beat you over the head with shit, and that
Right.
even if someone doesn't understand what you're talking about or catch the references, they still get the feeling of being beaten over the head with
Right.
something. It doesn't even have to be necessarily be intellectual. It could be personal or emotional, just stuff that's
Right.
entering your head. But then there's lyrics that are like more like a space that other people can enter into and
Right.
feel like there's room for them in it, you know.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I, you know, I like to have it be like, okay, the room is some theory shit, but like you can, you know,
Well, and I
you
think
can,
all of music for me is like, I'm not a person who like writes a song, over days and weeks and revisions. Um, and I was never good at electronic music until very recently because my high is just the instantaneous kind of like connection with a particular set of sounds. You know what I mean? So I can be like listening to records that are like my favorite records in the world that I've listened to hundreds of billions of times, and I'm like, oh yeah, that brilliant album has great lyrics, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't know half the shit he was saying. Like I just suddenly realized,
yeah.
I think the goal for me is always still to make the music so good nobody gives a fuck what you're saying.
That's legit. No, that is definitely legit. Yeah, I didn't realize you wrote so fast. I mean, that makes sense. I kind of for me it's like I feel like if you're gonna make deep shit, I mean, I think this applies to everyone. If you're gonna make something that really is deep artistically, you do have to like bring everything that you have going on in
Yeah.
you at a given time. It has to be brought to bear on the music, but it doesn't necessarily have to be overt or obvious. But like, you know what I mean? I'm like
Mm-hmm.
kind of just like even if I'm writing a melody, just some weird Mark Fisher like lecture that I listened to on YouTube that morning. It's gonna be in there even if it's just
Sure,
especially because I'm
sure.
pretty obsessive. Like I'm prone to
Yeah.
cyclical thoughts, so it's just like the
Right.
shit. Sometimes you know it's like the music can be a way out of that, but but it still relies on some of the crazy Ethereum
Right.
sessions and stuff.
Well, and I've never started a record with lyrics. It's just like
Oh, you don't?
we even talked about doing that with the Vaura record because there was certain things we wanted to try, and Toby was like, I think it might be good if you just like wrote the lyrics first, and then kind of like sang a vocal melody over a drone, and then we can build things out. And and I don't know. It's like I want to do it someday, but
Oh,
my
you didn't end up doing that, huh?
but my approach my whole life really has been basically once I developed like the kind of like ability to like improv melody off the top of my head using vaguely word sounding things, like then I have a demo and I'm stoked on the demo, and I get really attached to the demo, and I get attached to like certain ways certain phrases sound, and then I'm like, okay, now I need to put words where this is, and I
Oh,
need to
okay. That's yeah.
make my ideas sort of fit into the words. So it becomes a lot of sort of like puzzle fitting in a sense. So I'm really almost just trying to put content to something that was like initially really off,
Yeah,
not
yeah. But you
out.
have like cadences. There's
Exactly.
like the melody that imply yeah, other way around. Like I do
Right.
write lyrics first, but I think it's cool though to like I'm getting more into the idea of just like deciding on a process ahead of time. Like actually just like even if you didn't
Yeah.
do that exact process, just the idea of Toby being like, dude, do it this different way.
Yeah.
And just like I think that there's something kind of sick about it. I used to be like, well, I'm not gonna do some weird plan. I just fucking write how I write. But it's like this. It's cool to like
Oh,
disrupt
for sure.
yourself. You know, just choosing some weird other path. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I feel like right now that's a lot to do with collaboration. Like I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I really love about working with other people. I mean, if you heard the demos I sent to like Peter Newton and then heard what he did with it afterwards, it's just like completely trans. It's not what I had in mind for the project at all.
Yeah.
It's a million times better than what I had in mind. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like, especially when you're doing as many projects as I am, it's like it's this like it's the music doesn't even feel half the time. I'm like, did I do? I feel like I'm listening to some like I get to work with so many people that I don't deserve to get to work with. Like
Well, that's
you know,
collaboration, man. But I mean,
uh,
yeah. No, I
and
mean,
I feel like I'm listening. Last night I'm like listening to Toby Jarvis music. The other day I'm listening to Peter Newton's music, and it's just like so it's like this really great way of like almost being outside of it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I mean, there's definitely in Vaura, there's all this stuff where I'm like, I could see maybe Josh wrote that, but it sounds very like Kevin'd out. Like, you know what I mean? Some of the,
yeah.
and just Toby, like just some of these like little like, um,
Well, I mean, there's almost a simple formula the way that band works. They're really musically smart, and I'm really musically dumb. So basically,
I think that's a self-effacing way of putting it, but
well,
yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I
I
mean,
bring a bit, like, so it'll be like, okay, I've got this demo. It's really simple, and then everybody does something like fucking dope with it, And I'm like,
yeah.
like,
Well, you know,
and
it's sorry, go ahead.
or it'll be like somebody brings their shit that's like really way clever than and more interesting timings and scales than I would ever come up with, and I'm like, how about if we simplify it a lot?
Yeah. Well, dude, that's
So,
that's cool. That's cool to hear you say that because I mean, it's interesting because you said that you're musically dumb. Meanwhile, you're coming with a suitcase full of fucking Sloterdijk and whatnot to the lyrical table, which is like I mean, what is smart? You know what I mean? But there's something to that, man, where it's like I don't know, like maybe because you're maybe like you're saying that not smart and dumb, but just as far as levels of complexity and levels of like
right.
how much something is wrought, how much it's fiddled with and whatnot. That like you're saying, the musical shit that you bring to it is more like intuitive.
It's
It
intuitive.
has it has integrity in what it is, and then but it's like ready for more.
Yeah.
It's ready for more collaboration and stuff, but then it's like lyrically you're like dealing with all this like hyper like hooked up shit it's like you have like Prague mind, Prague brain.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, it's just like I do get to work with so many cool people, and it's just I guess I have like I know what I can do, and I haven't really my way of branching out from what I can do, rather than just keeping on doing the same thing, is like working with other people on stuff lately. So
Dude, that's fucking, I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm only now getting a grasp on what my actual
yeah,
main strengths and main limitations are. I mean, just like
right,
really getting in, just knowing your place, man. Just
right.
getting in where
No,
you fit in.
exactly,
Just
exactly. Yeah,
um just submitting to not hierarchy but difference.
right,
Okay,
right,
let's
right.
let's look at some of the let's look at the peanut gallery, man. I don't want to ignore
Oh yeah, I was
all
wondering.
this.
I was wondering if you had this.
Oh yeah, people are. Oh, you don't have the comments up on your up on your joint.
Uh-uh.
Aesthetics are extremely effective rhetoric. Although sometimes when you're working in a purely aesthetic approach, you don't even know what your rhetoric is trying to get across or stir up, other than just buy a T-shirt and thrash out. But let's see what we got. Talking about. Okay, yeah. So Shaman asks, have either of you read Mitchell Heisman's Suicide Note? Josh, I have not, but do you?
No, no.
Uh, Shaman says Nick Land has commented on it before, briefly, a tad affirmationally. Word. All right. Maybe I'll yeah. I'm gonna go back to fucking Fang Newman, just the classics, man. Charlie, what is your composition process like? Man, that's so cool. You're asking Juan. I mean, that would be like a 10-part, YouTube thing. Maybe I will self-indulge enough at some point to give like actual like tutorials about how I write music. That's these invitations will make me more likely to indulge like that. Yeah, Beatrix, I'm holding back. I've driven Josh to annoyance too much this week. You've been having some Facebook backs and forths with Beatrix.
Oh, man. I've been having so many Facebook back and forths. I have no ill will towards anyone that I had them with, though. So Beatrix needed needed distress.
Yeah, man. Nathan says getting canceled is canceled. Marcus Kane wants us to talk more about race realism.
I think getting canceled might actually be canceled.
Yeah, no, that's what
I was just
that's what
joking
they
with
said. That's what Nathan said.
I was just joking about this with Peter the other day. I sent him this like Facebook post. I was like, I was like, yo, dude is just going for it. I was like, I don't think anybody cares anymore. I don't.
Yeah, I no, I don't think I think Corona, man, as fucked up as it is, fucked up, as bad, as problematic as it is, like I think it's gonna wipe away some of the petty, weird horse
Yeah.
shit, culturally, like I don't know, yeah, all the shit I see on Twitter, people's like, I don't know, the way people are taking the ball with Corona and running with it politically and socially,
Mm-hmm.
it seems a lot less cringe than previous things. I
Yeah.
mean, it
No,
seems
for
a little
sure.
more like just class war, like
Yeah.
just guillotines, like you know what I mean, just good
Right.
old fashioned, like you
Dude,
know what I mean, just very like
I'm
I
pretty
mean,
on board. I'm pretty on
yeah.
board.
So
I mean, there
yeah.
have been these moments I feel like where something about the flow, and it is still flow, but like I remember I feel like the most distinctive one for me was when David Bowie died. Um, the whole fucking internet felt different. Like at least of everybody that I ever interacted with or
Really?
was in usually interacting with, and there's been a little bit of that same sense recently, where it's just like this it feels people are just not on their bullshit as much. I mean, some people are obviously burning 5G towers and shit, but like, there's
Yeah.
definitely some people on their bullshit. But
Did wait,
uh,
what did you think changed after Bowie died? What was that? What
well,
kind of bullshit
I don't know. It was just like it was really. I feel this is going to sound really like naive and sort of like nostalgic and hokey, but I feel like in some sense, there he more than a lot was like representative of like the death of like a bookend, like the end of an era. You know what I mean? And I think I mean we say that all the time, RIP so and so, but but there was this sense that this like massive person from like the 60s and like gender androgyny pioneer, like art pioneer, all these kinds of cool things that he had accomplished. And I feel like in people were saying goodbye to more than just David Bowie, I think. And I think it brought out a kind of like emotional connection in people who kind of like who had a connection to that past. I think who knew like we were moving into a new phase as somebody like him was leaving the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
maybe
I just
yeah.
made people speak differently and act differently for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's just like what he represented culturally and what he did. It's like it's not like it's no longer deep, but it's just the world is so different now that
Yeah.
you can see how there's no way his
Right.
stuff just doesn't mean the same thing now. It has to be only seen in relation to this previous world or something like
Right.
I don't know. Sort of like quote unquote gender bending. Like that's not some people use now. You know what I mean? Now
Right.
it's just like fucking identity. It's like what is your identity?
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, this is something that's also about I get it my old like my most old white guy curmudgeonly when I'm kind of like, well, just because there's it's not necessarily a great habit that like the internet has made us all like hyper taxonomists. You know what I mean? It
yes,
really is. It really feels like a sort of like outgrowth of a technology that's designed to sort of like sort and be efficient. And the more like ways that you can put something in a spreadsheet, the more sorting you can do and the more efficient you can be. You know what I mean? So you have this kind of like movement, and it's like I have a lot of I would say sympathy and hope to I'm way more I don't know. I try to keep up with these conversations, and I try to modify my behavior when I think it's when I somebody makes me aware of the fact that I'm you know behind or not being cool to people uh, by
Well,
sort of like using my by sort of not changing my habits, I guess is the best way to put it. But what I'm getting to is I think people like Bowie and Genesis, it's like they were doing it, you know, like they were doing it in a way that like genuinely meant. And Douglas Rushkoff made a crack about this the other night. He's like, I knew Genesis like throughout their life. You know, I knew Genesis as a he, a she, a them, and I knew why Genesis did what Genesis did. You know what I mean? And and the 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 dead naming discourse doesn't apply to every single person who ever fucked with gender. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
Genesis' point was to not be able to put it in a spreadsheet. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
no way,
yeah.
like, the whole idea was there can't be a wrong box to put me in because, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know?
No, I know it gets like I try not to like I try not to jump into shit about like trans stuff when it's just not my, you know, it's just not.
Right. You know,
But I do
I mean, I think
but when you say taxonomy though, yeah, it's like there's this thing with like I identity. It seems almost like because the human subject is just being like rendered by these technological forces, and we're all cybernetically, you know, like all that shit I was saying about just becoming machines among
right.
machines, and that sort of delusion, just problematizing of like the idea of identity. It's like part of the reaction to that is being like identity. You know what I mean? It's like
That makes sense.
like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I know you were saying it more, which I also agree with and understand. It seemed like you were more on the vibe of like, well, there is this sort of commodity vibe of like everyone has to have in their Twitter bio this like, right? I mean, this sort of like post Maoist, like da 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 da
Right.
da, he him they, you know, like all the shit. Like
Which
I
I should add the caveat. I mean, I totally think it's like I totally get the idea, and it's, you know, it's funny because people like somebody like an old white male atheist is like the absolute antithesis. But I feel like uh, irreligion is my lens through which I always end up understanding and sympathizing with the arguments that like uh, people younger than me and people from a different experience than me, trans people, you know, who are kind of like trying to explain, here's why we want this. And when I understand it in terms of like the whole world is religious and I'm not, and I don't like, I feel, you know, why should I have to feel like a shit because, you know, like, wouldn't it be nice if like, you know, the world adjusted to where I didn't feel constantly, you know. So I get it. In other words, I'm trying to say that like I'm down with most of these things. I just think that I think you should be able to be down with it, but also be like, maybe there are elements of it that we should understand as like just contemporaneous habit. Like your kids are not going to be doing this. You know what I mean? Their kids are not.
yeah.
So there's no sort of like really intense like. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent.
I don't know, man. Some of the stuff though about like maybe I'm just old or like keeping up with stuff or like our kids, dude. The part of me that is reactionary, man, is like I'm just like, why progress, dude? Like, I mean, just why? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know, but and then it's just like, because my friend was saying, I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, he was like, we were talking about another friend of mine growing up, and they were like, how do we put it? I was like, man, you know, like our friend's he's getting more and more conservative in his old. He's very conservative, and like, and my other friend was like, yeah, well, that happens, and you know, it happens in your old age, and I was like, no, people stay the same, and then the world changes, and so there is a
Right.
part of me that's just like, but see, you get into this, it starts ending up like disrespecting people's, you know, it's just like disrespecting trans people, like shit that I'm not down with at all. But I do on a very broadly philosophical kind of NRX friendly level. I'm just like, why are things necessarily just getting better because they're changing? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's just like assumed that our children are gonna like quote unquote know more than we do. It's assumed that we know more than our parents. We
Right.
might in certain ways know more than our parents because we now know how to like embrace people who are trans and non-binary. You know what I mean? But it's like that doesn't mean in general we're like progressing. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I
I
mean,
don't
we're
know. It's like,
progressing in that way. I think, I mean, I think obviously there's things about human experience that are just always, there's a reason we can still read classical poetry and philosophy, but there's a reason that it was good to move beyond a lot of the fucking crazy things those people did. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, yeah.
And I think for me, I think when I was a bit younger, I was more reactionary, and I had, luckily I think some good patient friends, just who are willing to kind of like stick by the argument and just keep kind of hammering away. And I think at a point I kind of realized that it in a very almost logistical sense, it's just work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to keep up. It's a lot of work to learn all this shit when you're older and the world is changing. It's just a lot of work, and a lot of people just don't fucking want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, even with me, I'm like, I don't want to learn what cave Twitter is, much less like try to learn all, like, it is literally complex to learn like all of the taxonomy of sexualities that in very, very wide usage with like younger people, asexual, I mean,
well, so I get
as you do the work, you're like, okay, I get it. This is fine. But it's just like it's work.
Well, but I guess my vaguely reactionary vibe on that, it's not fuck change. It's more just like, if you want to talk about the work of keeping up with change, to me, a part of that work, as I'm sure you'd agree, is questioning, is this change good or not? Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is why, like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like the idea of like degeneracy, like that's considered like this completely right-wing thing that's always used to sort of like bully trans people or bully queer people. But it's like, I mean, even if you don't agree that those things are degenerate, it's like, it's very possible that things are getting worse or degenerate. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in many ways, I'm just saying, like, so that's my sort of anti-progressive thing, is like, I'm just not into this. I'm not into this thing of just like, oh, you got to stay up with the kids because they've got the new thing. So maybe it's like, I mean, the kids might be fucking foolish, dude. I mean, it's like,
No,
yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's a huge part of my like in. And maybe a little bit less so now, but like when I was beating the kind of like anti-tech drum like a couple of years back, like there was a huge moment where you had to like break through. Like everybody was like, no, this is what I've grown up with, this is great, this is how I meet friends, this is how marginalized people form communities, this is how we're going to use these tools to like overthrow the blah blah blah. And I mean, everything I said was considered completely uncool, but I'm just like, I think y'all are wrong. I think this is like, I think this structurally bends towards authoritarianism.
Right.
I think that's been borne out. I mean, I feel fucking vindicated.
No, that's the thing. Like, certain things are considered progressive or left, and then they're like not. Like, like there are like these zigs and zags, I guess. Sure. Of just. I mean, wasn't it in like totally unregulated? Like, I don't know, some shit like used to like anti-globalism used to be kind of lefty, and now it's like right. I don't know. I'm not on the same. You were a little bit more part of that, like part of that actually knowing what's happening type.
Oh, shit. Dude, I was like, I wish I still had my gas mask that I bought for the WTO protests, and that didn't go down because of September 11th. I was like, where did that thing end up?
It's a different time, man. It's a different time. Right? I was listening to Andrew WK and shit, and just like not knowing what anything was, but yeah, man. Let's see, what do we got here? Being socially forced to apply the taxonomy of the Marcus, it's not that your takes are overly right-wing, it's that they're just not high in quality. You know what I'm saying? They're just not good takes. It's not a left-right axis thing. It's a vertical it's a vertical
what are the
a question of quality. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But we got Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, and Let Us Dream Now, the impossible dream of a math professor. I don't. Yeah, Sleepy Time, Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. I like them. I opened for them with a short-lived project with Ty Braxton and Mike Pride at the first week of North Six being open. I want to talk about old.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, damn, I was kind of like, I don't know. We got deep on the theory. I felt like I wanted to get more into your musical stuff, but maybe that's just how it. Maybe that's we talked about music too, right?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
we
know,
can talk
yeah.
more about music.
Yeah, I will. You want to keep going because I actually have no problem just going for super long. Are you
I got
trying to get
nothing to
anywhere?
do, man. No.
Let's do a final thing. I don't know, just like musical aesthetics and shit. Like I don't know, like yeah, I don't know what like I mean I always want to like bring this philosophy shit somehow back around with like actual aesthetics and like sound and shit. Like I don't know,
Right.
like I mean is like well, we talked about goth aesthetics and whatnot. How like that's I don't know. Do you think any particular aesthetics are inherently left or right in valence? That's some really reductive question, but I always like think about that shit. I'm like, is this guitar tone communist?
Yeah,
Is this reverb, you
I,
know, reactionary?
I think I have a sort of like really knee jerk avoidance of that. I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I'm not really down. I don't think with aesthetics having necessary political connotations.
No, I don't know. I like the idea that they might though.
Yeah. Why do you think that? Why do you think you like it?
I don't know because it's got this essential. There's this essentialist sort of like that like sound waves could have ideology
Well, I mean,
like
it's honestly pretty interesting that you put it that way because I mean, I don't think my aesthetic is anything except like really in general, it's always just been otherworldliness. It's always been, I was watching an interview with David Bowie the other day. He's like, all I ever wanted to do was get out of my fucking boring town and my boring life. And grew up in a boring town, and all I ever wanted to do was get out. Like made to go to church, and I hated it, and it was terrible, and like I just wanted, it's just all ironic because I'm like, how can I get my daughter to a place that was like as safe and nice as where I grew up now? It's now how I see it. But like, I mean, goth for me has always been transform. It transforms most of the things I like. It transforms the surroundings. You know what I mean? So what's the politics behind that?
that's a good
The
question.
outside, I mean, I guess it all you go.
Yeah, well, that is. Well, hey, man, otherworldliness. This is a good question. Let's just riff. I don't know. Let's just riff on what you happen to be saying. So, but so otherworldliness? Are there certain aesthetics that are inherently like otherworldly? You know what I mean? Because it's like, or is it more just like getting to that vibe using whatever aesthetics make people feel that way? Or do you think there's like certain sounds and shit that are like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't
mean,
know.
the thing is a minor chord sad and a major chord happy.
I know. I wonder.
Like,
I
you
don't
know,
know that. Yeah, I think maybe not. I think maybe
like
it's not.
after you've just been listening to as much minor key music as I have my whole life, it's like it's not distinguished. It's not. There's no that
It doesn't
has no
sound dark
meaning
anymore.
Like it takes something else for it to be
It
dark.
doesn't sound dark. I do always think like dry no wavy guitar sounds left wing to me. It always no reverb to me just sounds it doesn't it's like not fashed out. Like I just feel like if you want to fash out there has to be like a certain amount of like reverb and
See, that's
shit.
interesting
Like
because
it's
like by like then you could say that like this sort of like EBM kind of has this really fashy vibe, but like
that's
for
pretty
me,
good.
I always associated it with bands with names like Mussolini Headkick and like all these European bands who are like very anti-fascist, and I always picture you like beating up fascists to it, not being a fascist to it.
Yeah, right. You know, it's just like militaristic and
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's uh he says inundation says magnetic feels 69 love songs is a primo goth album. That's one of my favorite albums ever. I have not thought of that as goth. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I disagree, that is not a goth album, but it's fucking great. It's a great record.
Maybe
It's
goth
gothy.
adjacent.
You think it's goth adjacent? Do you like?
Well,
Like some of the
he
synth
gets into
poppy
those really
shit.
baritone sort of like vocal textures, and he kind of has those like melancholy, like New Ordery, like
The synth, yeah. I mean, some of that
melodies and
synth
the
shit.
synth. Yeah,
That Tin Pan Alley shit is like the least goth shit that's ever been fucking
yeah,
made.
yeah.
What
Definitely not
is
comfort song.
I got a question. What is femoid? I hear people in the is Bea to Beatrix is Alexandra.
Oh,
Is that
okay, right, of
what's
course.
up, Alexandra? So okay, so yeah, she's like mad that someone is saying femoid. Femoid sounds like something that I wouldn't probably say. What is that? Do you know
What
what
is
that means?
femoid?
I don't know. Someone's like, I don't know. Someone else was being like talking about like femoids. Is that like there's someone who is
Oh, on the
feminine?
chat, somebody is saying.
Yeah. On the chat, I'm
Oh,
just like, is that someone who is feminine or like femoid? It
is
sounds
that a
like
derogatory term, or is it like I've never heard it?
it's for woman. Femoid. Yeah, I was gonna say like that doesn't sound like a person who has gotten pussy ever type word to say. Um, but yeah, femoid. Let's see. Anyway, it's just a stupid way of saying a girl. Dude, I'm glad I'm not 20 now, dude. Because I would be the biggest fucking piece of shit. No, actually, no. If I were 20 now, I'd be on some shit. But if I were 20 like 5 years ago, I would have been the fucking biggest scumbag, just internet wise, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, I can see it. I
Just,
can see it. I actually kind of going back to what I was saying about like my like kind of having people be there to like talk me out of bullshit, you know? Uh, and this is kind of on this. I'm still talking like about the internet days, but I mean, I even feel like growing up, like I was like everything that like now like angry young teenage boys are pumped full of. I mean, like it was enough for me to like get a Rage Against the Machine record and for Timothy McVeigh to blow up a building and for me to be like, yeah, fuck the government, let's blow up government.
right,
You know, I mean,
right.
that was like how stupid I was when I was in, you know, a senior in high school. You make these, and it's like I see all this crazy shit on the internet. I'm like, fuck, what kind of a like psycho would I have been? It was like
Yeah, because we
that I
didn't.
was a psycho, and everybody sort of like guided me away and was like, no, that's like actually
Well, yeah,
that guy was a crazy right winger, and Rage Against the Machine are just like kind of corporate, you know, like you know,
yeah. No,
like
yeah. We didn't have this little echo chamber of people. You couldn't like go online and be like people who think that type in search for like people who think exactly what I already think, and then there's like 20 people being like,
yeah.
with like fucking Kaczynski t-shirts being just like, nah.
I know,
But
the world was so much more like, you know, just some people around who just be like, nah,
yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah. No, exactly.
you're like,
No,
fuck
exactly.
you, you're
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
And then like
yeah,
later
yeah.
on, you're like, oh right, no, yeah, no, you
Yeah.
were right.
No, because I remember at college, I showed up at college, I was just like, yo, women are like, da, 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 da. And it's like people didn't even have to like, yell a bunch of feminist shit at me. They were just like, dude, really? I don't. And I'd be like, I guess not. I don't know. It just got like easily diffused without like some fucking MRA like deprogramming ceremony. It's just kind of like.
I was listening to this first Stabbing Westward record the other day as just a lark. You know, I mean, I never think to put that record on. I don't like give a fuck about that band anymore. But in my senior year of high school, their first record was kind of good industrial rock. It was produced by John Fryer, you know, 4AD, Clan of Zymox, This Mortal Coil. And I was listening to the lyrics and I was just like, Jesus Christ. I was like, because it's all this sort of like, you broke up with me. I'm so, you know, and kind of like Nine Inch Nails shit. But it's also like murder fantasies and stuff. I'm like, if this came out today, holy shit.
Yeah,
Bonkers.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
But it's like that was just
Yeah.
shit we grew out of, and luckily somebody came along and was like, "Hey, those kinds of like fantasies are
Well,
bad." You know, like, but
Well, I guess I would more, instead of being like they were bad, I would more just
well,
I would more just like ask the question of like how necessary is a revenge fantasy about killing your ex. Just how necessary is that? Because if it's necessary for psychic health, then like by all means. But if it's bad, then it's bad. I don't know. At least
right.
at least not just accepting it as being like, yeah, man, like that's just what rock and roll is about for dudes. It's
Yeah,
sort of,
exactly.
what is you owned them. We got a bunch of word. Well, you know what? I feel like we're good, man. I feel like we can. I feel like we could call it, man. Unless you
Yeah,
got some
yeah.
stuff you really want to get to.
Nah, dude.
I liked some of the conflict in here. I feel like as the audience for this live stream grows, there will be a sort of hopefully there will be a diverse ecology, but there may be some conflict. There may be some weeding out processes. You know, I'm not gonna play. I'm not gonna play God. I'm just gonna sort of see what amoebas prevail. You know. Oh boy. Word, man. Well, dude, thanks so much for talking with me, man.
Yeah,
And I mean,
a lot of fun.
anyone
Thanks for having me.
who's yeah, I mean, I think most of the people in the chat probably know Josh's music, but if you don't, well, no, but some people are gonna tune in way after this and maybe not know you. So yeah, check out Vaura, the last record, Sables. There's gonna be a link in the thing. And yeah, check out Azar Swan. Is it Azar or Azar Swan? I switch it up every time.
Azar.
Azar. Yeah, check out the yeah, it's a great record, Process of Weeding Out. Yeah, Azar Swan and the old shit, Blacklist, all of his old stuff, Religious to Damn. Yeah, man. So, all right, Josh, thank you so much. And yeah, let's talk. Let's get on that house party app.
Let's do it. Yeah, yeah, we should do this more.
Yeah, because I got nothing
Without
to
an
say.
audience.
Yeah, cool, man.
All right.
Be well.
Take it easy.
Peace, man. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Josh is a very razor-sharp character, a man of truly substantial intellect and heart and character. Yeah, man. I'll have to look up femoid, see what that's all about. I have a feeling that's not going to be like up in the lexicon. I'm maybe I'll start saying it around the house and see if Kirsten lets me say it. That'll be like a good barometer of what, you know, just like number one. Let number one woman in my life sort of be the arbiter, be the arbiter of how I fucking what twisted lingo I use. I put Kirsten onto based. She's like, I think I might be based. I don't know. It's extremely sexist. All right, I'll go with Juan on this. I believe you, Juan. All right, thanks for being here. Thanks for the saltiness of the comments, discourse, and I'll check you guys next time. Peace.